Happy New Year. Welcome back to Product Coffee. We are here getting started with a whole new year. Got a really fun session today to kick it off with. But before we do that, let's just hang out here in the studio for a minute and start off with our first cup discussion. And for today's first cup discussion, our guest today, by the way, is Cavelle Benjamin. He is the Director of Product Management at Granger.
Yes.
And he's been working on some really cool stuff that we're going to show you in a little while. And a lot of it's around using AI in product management, and not just for the product management team, but to align the whole organization. So it's really exciting stuff. Before we do that, I was looking at LinkedIn the other day, and you had reposted a YouTube video, a very simple little YouTube video from
Yes.
Anthropic, and some of your commentary on it. And it dealt with this challenge that I've heard almost everybody I know roll their eyes at, complain about, get frustrated with. And that problem is how modern AI, LLMs, and chatbots have this total sycophantic attitude towards everything that you do. You are brilliant. No matter how stupid your idea is, it's the most brilliant thing they've ever heard. They're incredibly complimentary. They just drip with unnecessary praise.
Yes.
And they also don't necessarily give you honest isn't the right word because that anthropomorphizes them too much, but they don't give you helpful feedback very often for a lot of good reasons. And so Kelly dropped the video in the chat there, so you can go watch that later. It's about 6.5 minutes long. It's a really short video, but it was a really good overview. But tell us what you saw there. Tell us what you learned from that and kind of where you took it.
So I really just got started, and Jason, you know that we got started in using AI recently and getting that response of great idea makes sense. I should have figured that out. And I knew that when I got those answers, I was going to get some weird results. And it was prompt after prompt. And hearing the work and the way that it was talked about by Anthropic and the way they're doing their research around it to minimize it and what they actually suggested you do as a user and how you phrase things. Don't talk about your emotions. Don't talk about what you want, but talk about what needs to happen. And so I kind of took that and said, well, what if I said it needs to be the Socratic method? What if I said, hey, think Socratically and give me a response on this artifact that I've created? Does it make sense? Is it moving in the right direction? And I actually saw it start to ask itself questions before it came to me with, okay, we have some options. What can we do next?
So first of all, what model are you using primarily? Are you
So
using Claude
I'm
or?
predominantly using Claude Sonnet.
Okay.
I go back and forth between Sonnet and Opus,
Okay.
and I'm using open code as part of that. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But I see the model responding a little bit better. But the minute I get away from think Socratically, I start to get the great idea. You
Mhm.
know, the M dashes or the rote things. And you think about how these models have been trained. They've been trained to actually get to a goal, and the goal is to be right. And
Mhm.
so, depending on how you ask questions, it believes it's giving you the right answer, which
Mhm.
may potentially play into an emotion or a perspective that you may have given it when you don't realize it. And so, how can you be more objective as you give these agents feedback or input to get to the answer that is needed, not necessarily the one that you want?
Yep. So tell me, when you talk about using instructing the model to be more Socratic, tell me a little bit. Can you give me a real specific example of the exact question you would ask?
So if I didn't like the output, and we'll talk about the models that I'm working with and how I'm structuring them, but as opposed to saying I want to change something, I will say review this Socratically and
Mhm.
give me options for how I should change this for the goal of making sure that you get more consistent in your responses to me, or you get more consistent in the artifacts that you create.
Okay.
And so that's I've actually been playing with that a little bit recently for the last couple of days just to see, am I getting more consistent responses? Am I getting more thoughtful responses? And I'm starting to see the questions come through for itself, but also better questions for me. And that was one of the things they talked about in the video. You don't want an antagonistic model
Right.
talking to you and questioning everything, but you do need a level of question in the process to make sure that things are moving in the right direction.
You want the right kind of pushback and pressure testing for your
Correct.
ideas. And so, yeah, and like I said, it's a problem that bugs a lot of us. And I've gotten to where I largely am able to ignore it, but it also it does create trust issues because once again, you know, these are probabilistic models. Their job is to determine the right next word in the simplest terms, or next
Exactly.
token. And the way it knows that it has done so is when it gets positive feedback, when it gets confirming feedback. And I know in that video, one of the things that she talked about, who was the speaker? Do you remember?
I don't remember the speaker's name, but PhD
Yeah,
doing,
she works for Anthropic.
but in a psychological role in
Mhm.
psychology. The role that she's in is very interesting, but the intent is to make sure that users are safe
Mhm.
when they use
Yeah,
models. That's
yep.
part of her role in what they're doing and making sure that users get the most appropriate answers for what they're asking for.
One of the things that she pointed out is that essentially all of the foundational companies are dealing with this problem. They are literally working to try to overcome this problem with sycophancy and getting a little bit better with each iteration, but it's not limited to one specific model. It's this common problem. I saw an article coincidentally on Business Insider, and they were interviewing this guy, Yashua Bengio, who is a professor at the University of Montreal. He is considered one of the godfathers of AI. He's one of the longest term thinkers in modern AI and computer scientists. And even he was saying, I lie to my AI. And it's not to deceive the AI and conceal information from the AI or
Right.
point it in the wrong direction. It's to try to avoid this same problem. Instead of saying, I have an idea, he'll say, my colleague has an idea. This is a
Interesting.
paper written by my colleague, and I'd like you to critique it. So the model tends to, in his observation, tends to not go as strong on the "you're brilliant" and more into an honest or I guess, a real valuable critique
More
and
objective.
evaluation, more objective, exactly,
Right.
because it's not trying to elicit an emotional response from who it perceives as the writer of the content. It's trying to help you perform your task, which is evaluate the content.
And I think that's one of the interesting things about how folks are leveraging AI today, in that there's an opportunity to use it as an evaluation in addition to creating the content.
Mhm,
But how do you create a system of framework so that there is this feedback loop,
mhm,
not just for you, but for the agent, and how they're giving you the artifacts, they're giving you the content that you are expecting,
mhm.
and how it aligns with what your bigger goals are, whatever they are. If it's specifically in product management, the goal is to create value,
Yeah.
right? And so, are we clear that we're actually creating value? Okay, the model said this is going to be great, thumbs up, right? But then let's go back and evaluate how the model actually got to that conclusion. And are we giving the model enough tools and frameworks to be able to say that, yes, this is a good enough conclusion to come to?
By the way, I wanna welcome everybody who's here joining us, whether you're in Zoom with us or if you're out there on YouTube watching us and you can't talk back, at least say hi in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. But if you're here on the Zoom call, this opening segment, this first cup is for you to be a part of. This product coffee is a meetup. It's not just come and watch a couple of other people talk, be a part of the conversation. So I want to throw the question out there to everybody who's with us on the Zoom call. How are you dealing with this sycophancy problem? Is this something that bothers you in your day-to-day work? Is it something you don't care about? Have you noticed it or do you just deal with it? I'm really curious about what some other folks have experienced. Please turn on your camera, by the way. We'd like to ask you to turn on your camera and join us here as though we were meeting up for coffee in person, be a part of the discussion. And there is Christian, our newest insider member. Welcome back, my friend.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be
Yes,
here.
glad to have you. So, how about you, Christian? Have you experienced this problem and how are you dealing with it?
Yeah, I put in some custom instructions, like if I'm using ChatGPT to tell me the truth, make sure it's the truth only, double check your work and things like that. And that helps some, but it's still it, and I try to say to talk straight,
Mhm.
don't add anything. So I try to put all the settings so it's as like straight talk as possible.
So you're essentially using your context and your system prompts to lay a foundation to avoid that, to ask it to avoid that behavior in the beginning.
Yeah. And I'd say it reduces it. It doesn't eliminate it, but it reduces it some.
And that speaker we're talking about on the Anthropic video is Kira. Her PhD is in psychiatric epidemiology,
Yes.
which is really interesting that we're using that in studying AI. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm glad she's doing it either way.
In relation to how those systems interact with humans.
Yep. Let's see here. Who else do we have on here? Hey, Amit. Hey, Brian. Hey, Chuck, Jerry, Jim, Joanna, John, Christian, Ori, Peter. We got a great audience here. Stephen, Wes. Good to see so many people back. I'm going to invite you to introduce yourself as well, regardless of whether you have a take on this, but that's kind of the topic of the day right now is how do you manage this problem of AI sycophancy? Chuck, you've got your hand up, so say hello.
Hi, y'all. Sorry, I can't be on camera right now.
Okay.
I've been building kind of a personal assistant with Claude and my Obsidian pieces. And one of the key things I did early on was give it a consistent persona, which was, in my case, you're the demanding professor who always wants you to refine your thinking, never accepts the answer is right and pushes back. So kind of similar to the Socratic piece there. Then I have also given it different context. So if I'm asking for research or job help, kind of what my expectations are, the tone, and those particular things. And those have helped. It still gets a little, hey, good thoughty. So I have to watch it. The other thing I've done too, just for pieces in there, is anytime we're doing research or anything, ask for citations and links. So I can at least second source it. Because as was said earlier, it sounds so accurate that unless you really know the context, it's not always easy to tell if it's making something up. So I pretty much assume it's confabulated stuff kind of early on and works.
Are you having success? So when you're asking for citations and sources, are you having more success than we were, say, a year ago with getting actual real sources versus hallucinated sources?
Yes. So
Models
I've built learning plans using it. It's kind of set up a good learning plan. Claude's good for that, by the way. It often is providing links. Now, sometimes they're a little older, but they're generally pretty solid. I may ask it some questions, but then if it's talking about some pieces, it's got fairly good at giving me referenceable links, but it's much better than a year ago.
Good. Cool. All right. Who else do we have here? Let's see here. I'm going to jump up to John. How warm are you today, John?
It's pretty warm here in Minnesota.
Yeah, how we doing?
We're in the 30s today.
That's not too bad.
The way that I use LLMs to avoid sycophancy is to always put it in a position to argue a side. And I often try to get it to argue against what my best judgment tells me and double check, am I really going in the right direction or am I missing an opportunity that's right there that I don't see?
Can you give a quick example, even a high level example of how you might phrase prompt to do that?
A specific custom GPT to help me make tough decisions. And it's set up in a way that it comes to a best recommendation and immediately goes to argue for that best recommendation and then argue for the next best option.
Okay.
And comparing and contrasting how it approaches those two helps me to make sure that I'm making the right choice.
I have found some success, like you just said, in specifically reminding the model, don't make something up. I've used it enough that that ChatGPT at least starts to feed it back to me. Don't predict, know. Tell it, know the answer, don't predict
assume.
the answer. Yeah.
Don't assume.
And it has, at least when I criticize it, it's saying, yes, I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to know the answer, not predict the answer, and go do a little bit more research. That seems to be getting some positive motion, but I haven't quantitatively tested it to know that it's helpful.
And what's an example that you have of that as far as, hey, know the answer? And is it coming back with citations? Is it coming back with relevant research?
So most of my most recent examples are in vibe coding examples.
Okay.
So I'll have something that's not working the way that it's supposed to, and I'll be looking for some help with troubleshooting a bug. And Claude especially will just go off and start with the most obvious solution. And, as a developer, that's not a terrible idea. What's the simplest thing that might possibly work?
Right.
It'll implement the most obvious solution, and it won't necessarily confirm that it's worked. So I've built a whole / command for Claude on reminding it of best practices so
Right.
that it will go actually test things before it tells me they're done and stuff like that.
Yes.
But very often it'll start to head down a path that is predicting the most likely approach to solve the problem based on essentially a linguistic probability, not by actually going and researching the problem, finding potential solutions, and then ranking them in terms of likelihood of being the right solution.
Right.
And so I will often tell Claude specifically, don't predict the answer, go research and know the answer, know your path, make a plan, and use planning mode. And then same thing in chat will very often, if I'm using ChatGPT as a proxy to help aggregate some market research or put a bunch of information. So I do a ton of product manager interviews, researching my book and some other things. I've got a lot of transcripts that I'm going through. And so I'm looking for topics, and I'm specifically saying, okay, don't predict what might be a good topic or a good question. Go look at the open questions that we have and know
Right.
the answer.
Okay. And I ask that because you bring up, hey, use best practices for coding, for example. I actually, when I try to code, I actually say, hey, use test-driven development. Start with the failing tests, implement the code, and then make sure it works. And I think before I was doing that, I had a bug in something I was tinkering with. I said, please fix the bug, and it deleted all the code.
Yep.
Because it
Yeah,
was
well,
like
that'll fix it.
It was like the test pass now. The test pass. That's not what I needed you to do.
Yeah. Right. That's a great example. I want to invite Jerry to jump in real quick as well. And I know you've been playing with a lot of things, Jerry, and you're also you're leading a new effort here within the product copy community on some overall AI learning accountability. And I'd love you to talk a little bit about that. But first, tell me what you're learning about managing AI kissing up to you. And then tell me about what you're starting here with the product copy.
Yeah, I've struggled with AI being a kiss up since day one. It's because, and you know this about me, we know each other. I am my own worst critic, right? If anybody human says to me, wow, Jerry, that's a great idea, my inner voice says, are you sure that's really a great idea, or are they kissing up? And that's just my own brain at work there. So when I saw that from AI, oh, you're brilliant, or that's exactly the way you want to go, that immediately started rubbing me the wrong way. And so one of the first things I added to the system prompts for all of the LLMs that I use is a statement that says, I don't like platitudes. Tell me the truth, shoot straight. Several of the other comments that folks have made around trying to drive the machine to give more honest feedback. And just like everybody else has talked about, I see the same thing. It works to a point, but it's not perfect. Yesterday, turning it to what we're doing with AI in our community, we have a channel now called the AI Habit. And it's a challenge based on, I should know this right off the top of my head, and I don't. It's the AI Habit Lab is the challenge, and it's based on Hillary Gridley's post that she made last year that had a 30-day challenge in it for learning AI and making AI a part of your everyday use. And so we're on day 3 now of this challenge. And every day we post the next entry from Hillary into the chat. And we all stay accountable for posting or sharing something about our learnings based on that as a thread underneath the challenge. And real interesting, yesterday's challenge had us solicit the machine for ideas, and then it asked us to challenge those ideas, and then it asked us to ask the machine to come back and give us a plan for the best idea. And it was fascinating because the initial list it gave me, I liked. Like I read through the list and I tried it with both ChatGPT and Claude Opus. And I liked both lists. I was like, wow, those are actually really good ideas for ways I could use AI that I hadn't thought about. and not the generate a user story type stuff, but like really good ideas. And so I said, well, just pick one and give me a plan for it. I didn't challenge any of the ideas it presented. I said, just pick one and give me a plan.
Yep.
And in both cases, the one it picked of the list was the one that I didn't think was the best at all. And I was like, so I went back and I said, well, why did you pick? Tell me why you picked those. Like, of all the ideas you had, what made you think that's the best one? And I was amazed at how it came back and showed how the idea it selected helped me in my job function more than any of the others. And so sometimes just going back to it and when it comes back and says, hey, Jason, you're the smartest guy ever. That's a brilliant idea, blah, blah, blah. Go back and challenge it. Why do you think I'm the smartest guy ever and that's the best idea?
Yeah. One of the other things that I've had it do in that specific vein is LLMs will then typically go back and reverse engineer the reason for their answer. So it won't give you the chain of thought that brought it to the answer it gave you. It will give you a logical chain of thought that could have brought it there. Similarly, overcoming that is to then instruct it to go back, okay, use that same chain of thought and give me another, answer the question again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That'll be part of the topic that we cover here in a bit.
Oh, great.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yes.
I want to welcome once again, for those of you who are just joining us at the top of the hour, if you're watching the recording later, we've had Cavelle Benjamin here with us for the first cup today. Cavelle is the Director of Product Management at Grainger specifically for retail systems.
Actually, for our inventory management system.
But he's been doing a lot of work, and Cavelle spoke at Product Camp Atlanta earlier this year and showed an earlier version of what we're going to talk about today. But he's been doing a lot of work using vibe coding techniques and technology to build AI-powered agents for the product management practice at Grainger specifically. And it started off kind of as a little side project just for yourself to make yourself better, right?
It did. I finally got comfortable with the idea of using AI, and I said, well, can we shift the work left as opposed to the work being mainly for getting software out the door? Can I think about getting to a problem statement? Can I get to a set of solutions that are options to discuss with team members? And that's where it kind of snowballed into, well, how much further left can I go?
Yep. Okay, cool. So since I don't know that everyone is intimately familiar with Grainger as a company and what it is that you do, could you give us a little bit of an understanding there?
So Grainger has been around actually for a while. I believe we're celebrating 95 years or 96 years this year, but they're an industrial supply company.
Okay.
And so overall, we have what we call our endless assortment, where we provide as many products as you need. And then there is what we call high touch solutions. And that's making sure that our customers know when they are looking for something specific, we have the technologies. We talk about product information or what the customer actually needs. We pull that together and we're able to help them identify the product quickly, help them purchase it and get it to them quickly. And that's the core business. We also have customer solutions, and that's where my team fits in, where we support our inventory management solution, where we will go into a customer site and actually manage their inventory for them.
Okay.
And we have software solutions to help our team members do that.
Excellent. All right. So let's talk about what you've been working on.
Sure. So I guess the first thing is thank you, Jason, for having me, and thank you for keeping Product Coffee going. I know you and I have been trying to get together for a while, and we finally made it happen. And so to your point, like, this is about AI, but it's also about, hey, let's focus on what product management does. And so we won't actually get to AI until the end, because it's about, are we thinking about and solving the right problems? And so the talk being about clinical problem statements, it's how do we create problem statements that are visible for everyone, not like an internal thing that product comes up with, and then we have to massage it for our operating partners, then we have to massage it for the engineering team or design. It's a common language, and it also forces us to think about what data we need to support. Yeah, we call things problems, but do we actually have the data to support it?
That's a great perspective, because we talk about that all the time. Product managers own the problem space, and we're responsible for helping our constituent organizations, understand the problem space so that we can deliver solutions to that.
Right.
But a clinical problem statement is a specific way of addressing that.
And one of the things that I've always done is look for analogies in other places. And one of the things that I think trips a lot of product managers up is, how do we define a problem? How do we define a need? How do we define a want? And I said, well, what is a system out there? What is a process out there that is consistent as far as defining a problem? And I was like, if you treat the work, if you will, like a doctor or nurse, is there a consistent way that they describe the problem? And that's where we get into like, okay, if you use a framework like jobs to be done, do I get to the same kind of structure that I can share with business partners and they can interact with it?